Thank you for listening to the Run to the Top podcast. I'm your showrunner and host, Corey Nagler, and after 2 incredible years hosting, I want to end off by thanking you for supporting the show. I'm really just a normal guy who works at a desk during the day and loves to run. When I first got offered the chance to interview coaches, athletes, and other runners from all over the world, I couldn't have possibly been more excited. This has become a passion project for me, and I really love sharing those conversations with the running community. I'm sad to see the podcast come to an end, but the mission to help runners train smarter and stay injury-free doesn't stop here. If you want to continue getting great running content, then head to RunnersConnect.net to subscribe to the newsletter and find lots of great blog articles. As for me, you can follow my running journey on Strava if that interests you by putting Corey Nagler into the search bar. That's Corey, C-O-R-Y, and Nagler, N-A-G-L-E-R. Thank you for listening, and one last time, happy running. I feel like we've done endless different podcast episodes on how to avoid injuries or what to do if you're injured, and yet somehow we haven't done a single one about what we've actually learned from it or our own experiences. So, Andie, I'm really happy that you agreed to join me on this one.
Yep, and I'm coming off of, well, I guess it's been just about a year since I had surgery, so probably one of the most full-blown injuries you could experience as a runner. So, yeah, happy to chat about it.
Yeah, and remind me, I know you gave me all these details, but do you want to tell us a little bit about what was the surgery and what that comeback was like?
Yeah, I had my labrum repaired, and I also had a PRP injection into my high hamstring tendon at the same time. So while I was under, and so that was all to fix. I had a partially torn high hamstring tendon, and then I also had a labral tear in my left hip, so all in my left side. And so it had been sort of an ongoing thing. Most of my pain was in my hamstring, not in my hip. But the hip was inhibiting my glute function, so I was overusing the hamstring to run, and so I was having a really hard time getting good power out of that side, and then also I was having inconsistent pain. It would come and go, and that was getting frustrating. So that was why we decided to do the surgery. It was May 13th of last year, and so the first month following that surgery, you are not allowed to bend past 90 degrees. So you're limited. You have a very limited range of motion from that perspective, but you also do need to get the joint moving as soon as possible. So I was instructed to get back on the bike, and 2 days after surgery, actually, I think they even said that when I went to PT, I went to the PT the day after surgery, that I could go ahead and try that day if I wanted to, and I was not. I was a little bit more cautious than that, and I was a little scared to try. The first day was literally 10 minutes of just rocking back and forth my legs. I didn't do full rotations, and I had to keep upright. So I was sitting on the bike with my crutches at my sides to hold myself upright. And so that was an arm workout in itself. And so I started just rocking back and forth, just getting a little bit of movement in the hip, and then progressed to doing full rotations very slowly with no resistance. So I was instructed not to have any resistance for a period of time, and then it was just slowly building up the time on the bike, and then slowly building up some resistance as I was cleared to do so. And so that was kind of the first month was really just getting range of motion back in the hip and preventing scar tissue buildup. And then after that, it loosens up on some of those restrictions in terms of, bending past 90, but then you're also coming off crutches. So I was on crutches for 2 weeks with no weight bearing. And then the 2 weeks following that, so those last 2 weeks, I think I was slowly transitioning off of just one crutch. And so that was kind of the process there. I saw a significant change in muscle mass fairly quickly between sides. So my left leg just looked like it had atrophied pretty quickly, which I was shocked by. But that does happen a lot faster than we expect when it's full no weight bearing on one side of your body. It's pretty wild. And then, I think it took me about 12, I think I had the surgery May 13th, and I started running at the end of August, and it was 1 minute run intervals with 4 minute walk to start, and then I slowly built that up. I did 2 and 3, and then I went to 3 and 2, and then 4 and 1, and then transitioned towards more full running. Sometimes I think I was doing like 3 by mile with 1 minute walk between, so stuff like that. And a lot of it was that was to help kind of build the strength in the hip flexor more so than anything else, just getting the hip flexor functioning a little bit better. And that's something that I've noticed even post a year out now, that I still need to work on my hip flexor strength on that side. So I have a tendency to kind of want to side bend to my right and just sort of lean that way and not get full function out of that side. But now that it's healthy, that's been the process of reconfiguring how I was moving. So a lot of my rehab and the comeback was also was being restrained by how my mechanics were, because we really wanted to break some of the movement patterns I developed from probably dealing with this tear in my hip for who knows how long, years maybe. And some people, they endure it and it's a little bit more of a drastic injury, so their return to run is a little bit different because maybe they haven't been running on a dysfunctional hip for years, and so it makes it a little bit easier. But for me, I think I had developed movement patterns that were not great, and they were good for keeping me running, but not good for making sure that I was moving optimally. So I had to break a lot of movement patterns of movement that were not great for long-term health and training. So yeah, that's kind of a long-winded synopsis there.
Yeah, but I think that's such a common thing with running injuries, is like it's easy to chalk it up to just like shit happens, and on a certain level like that's true. You can't always control it, but often I feel like there are oftentimes rather like underlying either strength deficiencies or movement patterns that are correctable. And
Yeah.
in a weird way, it's almost reassuring as a runner that like there are actually things you can do to prevent this from repeating. As hard as it is somebody who myself has had a lot of the same injuries repeat themselves again and again.
Yeah, I always think back to like, okay, how did this happen in the first place? And there's so many things with the hip, especially because, I mean, for women even, there's just like we have a different alignment in our hips than men do. So whether that creates a predisposition to it, I mean, who knows? But there's also other things that people can have with hip dysplasia, things like that can make it more common. But for me, I grew up playing other sports. So I played soccer, and I was you have a dominant side. So I have a dominant plant leg and a dominant leg for kicking. And so I was played on the left, so I was pretty good with both, but I was still dominant on the right. And so my left leg was doing a lot of stabilization, and I was using my right leg for power. And so whether that was maybe the time frame where I could have done caused this injury, it's hard to know, or if it was just that some of the movement patterns that I had from soccer that had forced me to run a certain way because maybe I was stronger on my left side. And just little things like that can really influence the way we move. And whether that created some wear and tear in the joint, just how I was running after that is hard. It's hard to say. But I really saw the injury period and coming back from it as more of a, let's step back and fix things that weren't working well already, so that when we are back, we aren't dealing with the same things over and over again. Or how can I move more efficiently now that we have all these pieces back in a healthy state? So
And on like a scale of wishing you had that time back and would have been a better runner if you're training through it, to feeling like you're way stronger for having gone through it, where do you find yourself on that spectrum?
I think I think going into when the injury started, I tore my hamstring. All right, I'm assuming, I think I kind of like tore. I remember the workout I did in prep for Indy Monumental in 2022. So I was going to run the marathon there, and I felt super fit going into that year. I was having a really good year. I'd built back up after having to take some time off, and then within the 2 weeks of the taper, I started having this pain, and it did kind of, I remember the workout when it started, I was on the track, and I just sort of like felt it kind of set in, but it wasn't super drastic that I thought I tore something. Then the pain couldn't get to go away. And in some ways before that, like I think I had been neglecting my strength training a little bit for a period of time. So that might have been one of the reasons why I then tore it. But before that, I wasn't having a lot of issues, but I did have I did have a sacral stress fracture on my left side, and I had been having a lot of issues with my pelvis getting out of alignment for years. And so, I think that it maybe was just a matter of time, but I mean, it's hard to know for certain on that front. But once the pain started, it started kind of giving me issues from that point forward. The pain went away for a period of time, and I trained for another marathon in 2023, Grandma's Marathon in June, and didn't have pain for most of that training cycle, but I felt like I just couldn't get it felt like I was working just as hard and training just as well, but I was having trouble building fitness as easily. Like it just wasn't coming as well, and so I was just like, yeah, like these paces just feel a lot harder this training cycle. And no matter what I did, it didn't feel like it was changing that. And then I got to the taper, and the pain gradually came back. This time it wasn't sudden, and so I just kind of was like, man, this must have just stuck around, and just nothing got any better. And then we did the MRI. We saw what was going on. We tried PRP for the hamstring in the fall, and actually did get again, the pain went away. Raced Philly marathon in 2023 off of 10 or 15 weeks of maybe 4 or 5 weeks of just like building back up some runs very slowly, and then 10 weeks of trying to toss some workouts in, get the long run distance up. Did 3 long runs in prep. So not a whole lot of training for it, but was able to run without pain, and then recovered, built back up, and then the same thing, pain slowly started coming back again in February of 2024, and it just kind of felt like I was on this roller coaster of like, I didn't feel like I had control over it. It was the most frustrating thing, because you would just sort of like, pain would just slowly start coming back, and I'd just be like, God, like I'm doing literally everything I can. I'm strength training. I'm doing my PT. I'm taking care of myself. I'm listening to my body a lot better. And it was just, there was just no, if the pain was coming back, it was coming back. And so then I was just like, I could continue to train in this up and down cycle and just deal with it, or I could go ahead and take a step back and let's just do the surgery and, you know, come back stronger, hopefully. And that was really what happened, was that I was able to get rid of a lot of the pain, and then also it helped me to correct those dysfunctional things that, like my pelvis is still somewhat, I still have to be careful with it, because I still have that natural tendency, and there's probably still some sort of imbalance in my right side that I need to address. So my pelvis gets off a little bit, but it's not been nearly as bad. And the thing that I noticed the most looking at my form now versus before was that I can see that I'm actually getting my heel up in the back. So if you, like, one of the things they look for, if you do say like a form analysis, is that they want to see both heels like coming up in the back, almost like they're coming towards your butt a little bit, and we want to see the full face of your shoe. And on my left side, I wasn't getting that as easily, and so it was definitely, and also I was getting off my right leg a lot faster, and so that could have been that maybe my right leg, I could have been getting off my right leg faster because I wasn't wanting to stabilize as much on my left side. Who knows? But I was definitely had an uneven gait. You could see that lacking of power on one side. And so once, that was the one thing that we noticed the most coming off of it, now that I've looked at my stride a couple times, is that it's a lot smoother, it's a lot more balanced, it looks even. And so from that perspective, I can just tell, like, we're moving a lot better than we were before, and I'm going to be able to be more efficient. I can be trusting in that. And, if we can be more efficient, we can be faster without trying harder. So that's win-win.
Yeah, I think a lot of runners in this situation, it's so easy to just feel down on yourself and nothing but disappointment when you're going through injury, especially one that's prolonged the way yours was. But what did it take to kind of turn it into something productive, or find what you could actually do to correct it? In this case, it sounds like that being the gait on your left side.
Yeah, I think even just through the surgery and the injury itself, I kind of just was like, the urgency is not to get back to running. The urgency is to get back to being healthy, not the opposite, which I think is the tendency that most runners have, is I got to figure out how I can get back running as soon as possible. And for me, it was like, no, I want to get back to running optimally not just functionally. Like I don't want to be just like I can do it, I could run, but I really wanted to be able to get back to the same level of fitness and training that I had been at previously. And so with that underlying goal, I wasn't going to rush the process because I wasn't, I think the other thing that I was thinking was like I don't want to have to do this again. I want this to be successful once. I want to go through this once and come out the other side being better than I went into it, not sort of like, I'm lagging now and having trouble correcting. And so like the things that I work with my PT on was I was working with a really good PT for one thing, that he was really focusing on neural firing patterns, because that's a lot of what happens when we get injured is compensatory pain. And a lot of times when we get injured from that type of stuff is because we've started to change our gait to avoid pain, and that's problematic, because then we start to do something that's maybe not efficient and it just becomes second nature to us. And so we have to then intercept those movement patterns that we've created for ourselves, which may just be our brain wired to tell our body to do this and this and this in an order that it's not supposed to do those things in. But that has been the most efficient and best way for our bodies to do that thing for so long that we had to break that cycle. So we were doing exercises where we were literally like just firing muscles in a specific order. So turning on my core and then the glute and then the hamstring, not hamstring before the glute, which is a common tendency for a lot of runners that if their glutes are not working, they're probably overusing their hamstrings to make up for the glute for one reason or another. And so I had to actually practice the sequencing and then strengthen. So it was definitely these like more mundane exercises that were feeling like, I'm not getting a whole lot out of them, but I was, because it was just trying to like reinforce what we want to happen, so that when I do go back to full weight bearing and running and doing all these things, that becomes second nature and not the old way of moving.
And do you feel like you've broken that injury cycle? Like, did something kind of click where you feel like you've solved it, or is it more of a gradual process going through sort of the mystery solving of what it is and then correcting it?
I feel like it kind of is like, it's always a puzzle. No, we're not ever going to be 100% symmetrical. You're going to have some movement patterns that are inefficient, and that's just kind of the way that it is. Like you just have to try to get it as equal as possible. And I think when this first training block back after my surgery was great. Like I think I built up really well and felt good and felt even side to side. And I mean, I had a couple of hiccups here and there where things were like a little tight in places, but no big issues besides just being a little bit tight and sore in different places. Since I took a training break at the end of April and now have been building back up for a new season, I have noticed that I've been having more pain on my right side. And so I've been sort of trying to decode what's causing, like what am I doing? How am I running now that's putting a little bit more emphasis on my right side, and what things do I need to reinforce and that kind of stuff. So it's always sort of an ever evolving, trying to figure out what's the next, what's the little thing that's at play. But I think the best thing you can do because you're going to have aches and pains. You're running every day. You're doing an activity that's repetitive. It's just not letting things get out of hand. Like you got to be able to intercept them and be really in tune with what your body's telling you and be able to adjust and react. So like last week I did a race and it was definitely premature. Like I could tell my body wasn't ready to run a race super hard. And after taking my training break, it only been a few months, and I'm coming to the realization that that build-up phase for me is super important. I don't like to start workouts too soon. I think it's really important that I have a base of mileage before I really start to push my body too hard, because I just feel better that way. My two best training cycles were ones that I was coming back from something and I had to slowly progress, and I had the most success from that. So I realized that just kind of like looking back at this build-up that I've been on right now. And so that's been something I'm like, okay, I need to sort of think about how that looks. But I used last week I was sore after the race, and I used the lever and ran on the treadmill and put it at like 75% body weight And if you don't know what the lever is, it's kind of like an Alter G or an anti-gravity treadmill, which it just helps to kind of take some weight off so that there's not full weight bearing. And that was also a tool I used in my recovery cycle because it really helped me to take some of that, take the weight off so that I could actually move more, the way I wanted to. So that was a really, because I was able to actually do the running mechanics without the full weight bearing. And so that allowed me to really focus on good movement patterns and activating in the right order. And that was super helpful for me. So I've been sort of tossing that in even when I'm not injured to kind of keep moving efficiently, keep doing things, feeling good, and being in tune with my body in a way that's going to help me to continue to stay injury free.
Yeah, I find when you don't do these things, it almost just feels like a game of whack-a-mole, trying to like put out different fires. And I've almost come to not even love the word prehab because I feel like it almost denotes that you're trying to like prevent one specific injury that's happened, when really I feel like more runners should be doing general maintenance year round to make sure that you're not developing these deficiencies. And again, I'm
Yeah.
guilty too. I don't love the the stretching before a run and putting in your strength work and mobility, but
Yeah.
it's definitely, it's almost like you need to get fit to run instead of running being how you get fit, because most runners already are very aerobically talented.
Yeah, I mean, I've done tons of miles. I don't know that I don't need to do tons more, but like I've got that skill set already kind of banked. But I know that I need to work on, yeah, like making sure that I'm moving efficiently when I'm tired and making sure I'm not doing certain things when I get fatigued or, um, one of the issues I've had, and this happened before surgery, and also I had it in my race most recently, is getting cramping on my no, my right side. So it's the side that I tend to want to sort of side bend towards, and so I have to be kind of cognizant of that, and then also using my diaphragm better because I've notoriously just had issues with like breathing. Sometimes I think when I'm more nervous for a race, I have more diaphragmatic cramping issues, and so those are things that I'm constantly kind of trying to be aware of. But yeah, it's definitely, there's not like every time we fixate on a specific place that it hurts, we don't look at the big picture of like, well, what if it's coming from somewhere else? Like my hamstring was where the pain was, but it was coming from my hip being dysfunctional. So like, we can't just isolate one spot. I got to be a little bit more specific to like an entire area and really figure out where it's coming from. Like where's the dysfunction. And that's one of those things that I like having a PT that I see monthly. Like I want someone that I can check in with regularly. They can assess and see how my hips are. If they're getting out of alignment, like what do we need to do to address that? Just keep that from happening, that kind of stuff. And that's been really valuable to me, is that being able to just check in with somebody and ensure that things are still moving in the right direction.
So is that your takeaway in terms of not focusing on the one muscle group? Or are there other things you can do to make sure that if there are any deficiencies or sort of interactions between muscles, that you're taking care of them?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I mean, I think it's always good to just have a full body perspective and then know where your weaknesses are. So, I think one of the things that this seems like so off of like, okay, my hip was the injury, my hamstring was the injury, but I noticed that like my foot sort of swings in funny when I run, and so my calves tend to get tight, and I pronate a little bit on my right side too much, like my arch collapses. And so I've been focusing more recently on doing more foot mechanic stuff, strengthening the arches or walking on my toes and trying to keep my big toe involvement, like kind of making sure that I am pushing off through the big toe and paying attention to not swinging that foot around, because I can't help but think that that's part of this whole thing, is that why I keep getting out of alignment. Is it because my hip keeps wanting to kind of run the same way? So yeah, I think I just have been thinking more big picture, and kind of like looking at starting from where the first point of contact is my foot, and then moving from the first point of contact up to see kind of like where. And I also like to do my exercises in the mirror so I can see, which I was doing it was like a front foot elevated split squat. And when I was when I had I think my left leg forward, I can't remember which leg it was, I could see that I was like shifting my weight funny. And I was like, that's weird. And it was my right foot forward and my left arm out with a weight. And without the weight, I was not doing it as much. It was with the weight. And I think it might have actually had something to do with my shoulder positioning, which I've also sort of, my left shoulder sort of swings out, which was a counterbalance because of my hip. But it's still kind of a functional thing that it's not ideal. And so it's like you notice these little things here and there about how your body wants to shift when you're doing something. And I was trying to fix it. Like I was looking in the mirror at it and I was like, how do I get that back? And I'm just like moving around and I'm like, I can't even figure out why I'm doing that. And then you sort of like take the weight away and you see it and you're like, okay, so it's something else. It's not just, it's not simple. So it's good to just keep that well-rounded perspective of, we still need to pay attention to our upper body mechanics. We still need to pay attention to our lower body mechanics and our feet and all those things. And so keeping a consistent basis of strength for all areas that we use while running and thinking about them functionally, because there's some strength exercises that just help us to strengthen the muscle groups that are involved in running. But then you also need to incorporate the strength that's functional to the way that we're moving, because that's what you're going to need on race day is, we want your soleus to be able to know how to absorb shock and then still be a spring to kind of push you back off. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like to talk about some of the single leg exercises because I find that there's such a gap between what I am physically capable of doing weight wise and what I can actually do with good form. And to me, the second always takes priority because there's just no point in doing the exercise if I find that I'm like bending outward in weird ways. Definitely split squats is one of them, but I find too sometimes if I do like single leg deadlifts, I'm like flying everywhere if the weight's too heavy, and it's like that's probably not really accomplishing anything at that point.
Yeah, 100%. It's not like you like that was the thing that I like when I do core and stuff. I know that I've had issues with like doming in my abdomen. Like I did core all the time in college and just like had no concept of like what proper form was. And like I could do the exercises, they looked fine, but then I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to be like my core wasn't supposed to be like doming out. And so I was like, okay, that's not the way that it's supposed to move. And now like when I do core, I have to do like a more basic option in order to strengthen it because I can't do it without doming. If so I shouldn't be doing those exercises to the full extent, even if I think I can do them, because I was doing them inappropriately. Like they weren't correct, and so it was like a bad functional movement pattern. And so yeah, exactly. Like I was doing those little split squats, and like I probably should have taken the weight off of that side and just did them however like I was able to kind of like or just drop the weight on that side and figure out kind of how do we need to maneuver this. And then but then beyond that, like okay, but is it coming from if it is coming from my shoulder, is there a stretch or something I should be incorporating even before I do the exercises? Like is it as simple as I need less weight, or is it like I need to like pay attention to sort of like something needs to be opened up better before I do this exercise, and so that's kind of the challenge but that's why it's important to know if you're moving appropriately and if it's good form, because the other thing is that you do strength training without using good form and you're going to use different muscles and you're going to be strengthening things that you're not trying to strengthen, and then that defeats the purpose. So
Yeah, and there's limitations with flexibility too, right? Like you can strengthen the muscle all you want, but if you don't have the range of motion, it's only doing you so much good.
yeah, and that's that. I think that the really common place that people see that is in the squat. Whether they have some ankle dorsiflexion range of motion or whether it's low back or something like that where they're rounding too much so they can't really get their pelvis, they can't sit back well enough. And so there's lots of things like that can kind of be issues there. And they can also be, they can get injured from doing those types of things wrong. Deadlifts too. I was doing deadlifts. I was doing a straight bar deadlift, and I've never really done that before. I always did it with the trap bar. And I didn't realize I was like kind of like pulling up with my back, not with my hamstrings and glutes appropriately. And it was partially because I was kind of nervous about the bar hitting my knees. And so I was kind of like doing this weird thing, and I definitely threw my back out. This was, I think last year. I think it was last year, and I was like, oh, Okay, that was dumb. I need to be more cognizant of that. But, like things like that can be bad. And kettlebell swings is a big exercise. It can be really good for your glutes, but it's like can be really dangerous if you're not doing it correctly. Because again, that'll put a lot of strain on the back. So,
I'm curious your thoughts on why it is that you find yourself with more injuries now than back in college when you were maybe less cognizant of all these things. And I ask it partially selfishly because I feel like I'm doing a lot more of the right things now and still finding myself injured more. So I don't know what's going on there.
I'm sure like age is a factor. I in college I wasn't injured a ton, but I did have issues. Like I had a stress fracture my freshman year in my foot. I think that was more related to I didn't know I had celiac disease, so I actually had two stress fractures before finding out that was what was causing that. And so that was a problem for me. And then I had some IT band issues, which I'd had in high school, actually. And I had sprained my ankle in high school. And so, some of those things might have been things that started, becoming a little bit more present as I got into college. So I had some things, but I do think that the young when we're younger, our body recovers better, and so you can run too hard and your body will still recover a lot better and not put you at as high of an injury risk. So there's definitely that's a factor. But I think also just like how resilient you are with your mechanics and your movement patterns and your strength and all those things are super important. But then, when you're younger, I do think you have a lot more leniency in terms of what you can get away with than when you're older. And so when you're older, it's very important that you don't run your workouts too hard because you're at higher risk for getting injured because you're running too hard. You have to be a little bit more. The recovery runs have to be easier because we can't get away with that as much as we get older too. We have to make sure that we're balancing all those things. Um, Hydration, I think, becomes a lot harder as you get older, and if we're getting dehydrated, you can put yourself at higher risk for muscle tears and things like that. So it's hard to say because there's definitely runners who have never been injured and they've gotten older and they've just been haven't run into these issues, and that's the ideal. So it's hard to like really boil it down to a specific thing. I'd say um, I was relatively uninjured once I got past the IT band issues. I think that was my sophomore year, spring of my sophomore year. I was running into a little bit more of that. But I mean, I had a bulging disc in high school or college, so I had things that I could kind of work through, but there were still issues. I just was able to train through them a lot easier or manage them a lot easier. And I also had the other thing that I think we discredit too is like when I was in college, I had a training room. You could just go into the training room every single day of the week and go get treatment of some sort or have someone work on you. I could get massages every other week, which don't have that financial ability. Like it was covered, and I didn't pay for it in college, but you get into the real world, and then so there's definitely luxuries that I had then that I think are impactful, and so I wouldn't say there's like a one size fits all answer to that. Um, there's We're all made differently. We have, there's I think one something I learned recently in a class that I took at my PT was just, some of us have different ways that our bodies are structured that put us at risk for different types of injuries, and we all move in a way that suits our own specific strength. And so sometimes that's good, and sometimes that can be not good for injury prevention. And so those are things that like you can work on, but there's also like there's limitations on you might have to be a little bit more. You might have to structure your training a little bit differently. You might have to do more cross training in order to get the same cardiovascular benefits and aerobic benefits. You might have to do a little bit less mileage or whatever. And so those things could be factors. And then the other factors are just kind of like what type of runner are you? Are you a more fast twitch fiber runner? Or are you a more slow twitch fiber runner? And there's variations in how those different types of athletes should train to get the most out of it and prevent injury. So I think it's just super complicated, and there's never I run into this with athletes I work with too, that sometimes it's just like it's hard to boil down like why did you get injured? You've been doing everything. Like there's not always an answer. And sometimes it's like, how quickly did you catch on that this thing was bothering you? How quickly did you adjust? How were you fixated on getting your miles in when something was bothering you? Or that kind of stuff really has an impact on us. And how is our mindset about it? So
And knowing that the takeaway cannot be just be younger and more injury proof, what have you maybe learned about yourself along this way and the type of runner you are that's helping you become less prone to injury?
yeah, I think that the biggest thing has been listening to my body a lot better. I used to kind of like have a plan for myself and goals for races and workouts that I would kind of get more frustrated if I didn't meet them. And I didn't kind of factor in outside influence like weather and things like that. I just kind of was like, gotta do it. And I also was constantly in this headspace to prove to myself that I could run X pace on this workout, or I was stubborn about what I wanted to run and not about what I should be running. And so I think that I've had to kind of look at that, take a hard look at that, and be like, am I even building fitness in the way that I want to by doing these workouts this way? Probably not. And so that was something I had to come to terms with and be mindful of, is just like the balance of it is going to get me farther than running hard and faster every day. I'm just going to be more broken down. I do think I tend to be a little bit more of a fast twitch, kind of more intermediate fiber. I think I've kind of fallen in the middle. I'm not quite like a mile 5K runner, but I think I am probably my best suited distances are probably like 10K half marathon. And so, I'm training for marathons now, so I have to kind of adjust what that means and training to kind of make sure I'm still working towards my goal. So something I'm going to try this training block is actually doing a little bit shorter of a marathon block. Like I'm going to see if I feel a little bit better. And that's actually what I did in my first marathon. I wasn't doing, I think we had increased the workouts, but I was still training with the girls at NC State when I ran my first marathon. We were just kind of tacking on extra intervals or whatever for a period of time. And then the last 6 weeks, I started working with a coach who was giving me marathon specific training. So I think it was just 6 weeks. And it was successful. Like it worked really well for me. And so I'm thinking, if I am a little bit more of a fast twitch intermediate fiber athlete and I lean more that direction, I don't want to lose that skill set when I reach marathon training. So I want it to still be something that I had touched on recently enough that I don't start to kind of lose myself and my strengths within a cycle. And so I'm going to see if maybe like doing just a little bit shorter of a build. I also know that I think I'm a pretty salty sweater. And so I've been a lot more mindful of my hydration, and that has been, I think, really helpful in just being able to, feel better and recover faster and all that from runs in general, just being better hydrated. Also been doing a little bit of heat acclimation, just trying to see what I can do and just kind of making myself a little bit more uncomfortable at times and, in a safe way, just to kind of work on those elements. But at the same time, like that's going to be harder on me. It's going to be a lot more to take. It's going to take a lot more out of me if I am a really salty sweater because I'm getting dehydrated a lot more often. That was another reason why I was like, maybe a shorter marathon block, especially with the race I'm doing being, October 20th. I think it's 20th, either that or the 19th. With that being the goal race, my training is part of it's gonna be in the heat. So, we have to kind of weigh that out. And so I was like, yeah, let's just like try that and let's focus on speed for a while over the summer without doing too much crazy volume and then wait to kind of jack things up. So that's been something I've been sort of thinking about and toying with. And but then again, yeah, like if I need to adjust, last week I was recovering a lot slower from the race than I would have liked. And so the workout that I did last week, later in the week, was a cut down, but I took 1 minute rest intervals between each of the cut down miles, and that was what I needed because my legs were still a little bit sore and not in a prime condition to do a hard workout. So I thought, let's do a cut down, starting from a steady effort, not overdoing it. Last mile got hard, but the rest of them were pretty much where I think I was like got a benefit of it, but didn't work too hard. And so I think that's been something I've been really trying to just play around with is, adjusting, being flexible, using things like the lever to my advantage, being able to just go ahead and take a rest day if things are feeling a little bit too much at any point or something's not feeling right. Always being get ahead of it, get ahead of the aches and pains, can help.
I think a lot of runners get really attached to being in shape, and it can almost be hard to let go of it. And it sounds like you're doing a lot of things to sort of wait to be in shape at the right time, whether that's a shorter training cycle or taking more rest or doing more of your mileage at kind of a lower weight bearing percentage on the lever. What do you think is the shift in mindset that led to training in that different capacity?
I think it was just kind of like reminding myself that at the end of the day, like what are the big goals? Am I having? I want to enjoy it. I want to feel good doing it. I don't want to feel beat up by it. I don't want to feel like, I don't think the other thing, and I posted this on Instagram recently, was that like when we let sort of fear guide our training, whether it's fear of losing fitness or fear of not being fit or fear of injury or fear of anything, we tend to kind of make bad decisions around our training, whether that be to run when we shouldn't be running or not resting when our body's telling us to. It just kind of ends up then it ends up just being more stressful and mentally not as fun. And so I kind of was like coming to that realization, but then I also was like, when we let our bodies and sort of how we're feeling and all that, just enjoyment and the goals and all the things that are coming with it, be the driver and our confidence, then we tend to make better decisions because we're confident in the fact that I can take this rest day and I'm going to be just fine. And sometimes that's just like a learned behavior. Like I've had, when I ran my half marathon PR, I had stopped using my GPS watch for a period of time because it was making me crazy. Like I was obsessing over the paces that I was running. And then I stopped doing that. And I was running with friends and not paying attention to I was running for time. I wasn't running for miles technically, but I would kind of equate amount of time to miles. And it didn't matter what pace I was actually running. I was still just going to go by whatever that was. And I had just a, generic old Timex on. And I found that to be super valuable because I did slow down on my easy runs. I just wasn't super cognizant of it. I was just sort of like doing my runs and not worrying about that part. And I ended up running my half marathon PR. And so I sort of learned from that perspective that like it doesn't matter what pace I'm running, and taking it easier and having good workouts come out of that really helped me to realize that I can have that flexibility there too, that like that's not going to be the thing that breaks me. Like running slower may actually be what I needed. And so that gave me something to sort of reinforce that part of me so sometimes it's actually being a little bit open to just doing things that you're fearful of or are a little bit unsure of. Like racing for me this last weekend, like this last week, I knew it was a little soon and I knew that I wouldn't love that. And I knew, but it was a good learning experience and practice for me. I realized when I don't feel ready, I'm a lot more nervous and that impacts me a little bit more. So I don't love racing from that perspective. And yeah, like it's probably a good thing that I raced a little bit under trained, just to kind of like have that perspective. But it's like, this doesn't feel good to me and I don't really enjoy it. I like to feel ready. I like to give myself more time. I like to have this good base of training before I really push my body hard. And so, ideally I wouldn't do that in the future. I would try to make sure I have races that are pushed farther out so that I don't run into that again, because again, like I don't want to I had to rush things a little bit more than I would like to. I threw in workouts sooner than I would have, just to be ready for the race. And I think I was fine, but I just didn't feel as good racing either. So, coming off of that, I was like, yeah, let's go ahead and just monitor that. I was thinking about running a race this coming weekend. And then I was like, no, I think I'm better off stepping back, thinking about the end goal, which is my marathon in the fall. I want to make sure that I'm prepared for that. And so if I, keep pushing it and don't give myself the space to kind of make sure I'm developing all these systems in the right order and in the right way, then I'm not going to be where I want to be in October. And so we're a long way out, and I have to kind of keep reminding myself of like, yeah, I'd love to have been really fit and ready to go and run all these races, but it's not going to suit my long-term goal. And so, we have to kind of put your ego aside and be like, yeah, this isn't the move. This is not the move. I got more important things I want to do. So, listen to your body.
Yeah, and I think we've talked a lot about some of the things you've learned about treating your body better over time. But I think, hindsight is 2020. We all learn over time. One of the most dangerous things is falling into that trap of doing the same things again and again. And, I've fallen victim to this too. So looking ahead, say 4 months close to your marathon or even years beyond that, is there anything that you really hope you remember from this experience to make yourself a better runner in the future?
Yeah, I'd say that honestly, I learned a lot about this experience going into this surgery from the period of time in 2020. I had to take 2020, beginning of that year, I was really having a lot of health issues. And then I had a sacral stress fracture in the middle of that year. I think it was end of April. So kind of similar timing to my surgery. I had a stress fracture in my sacrum, and but I had been having trouble just getting consistent training together before that, and then coming back from it, I was having the health issues had gotten worse, and so it ended up being that I had like a reactivation of mono, or the EBV virus, and so that, or EBV, and so that was what was causing a lot of issues. So I didn't have a good training year in general, and then I had to take 3 months off to recover from that autoimmune issue. And so when I went through that period, that was super hard, and it really ended up testing a lot of the things I'd been struggling with. So I'd been having issues with, like, the body image and eating disordered stuff that had lingered, even though had been working on it really hard. The break was what I needed to get my body to reset and kind of go back and get some trust back with it. So that period was really challenging and really hard, but I think it really helped me to come back and know that I could. And so when I went into this injury cycle, I was like, you know what? I know that I can do it because I just did it, and this is not going to be nearly as hard. And the other thing I learned from it was, the first 3 months when I had to take that time off, I wasn't allowed to get my heart rate up. So I had to kind of keep things very light. I wasn't allowed to do a whole lot of training. I was on this kind of more restricted diet. I'd been already not able to do a consistent training for over a year, and so the comeback took a lot longer. This time, I just, even the smallest amount of cross training, like that first month, I was like barely going any distance on the bike. It would go like 10 minutes and go 0.1 miles, like I wasn't going anywhere. But the small amount of just sort of like putting 2 feet in front of the other and just sort of seeing my progress. I got a little competitive with myself, I will say, through the recovery part, but that was kind of motivating to me. I was like, oh, I'm going to do 15. I was kind of like trying to do longer, like go farther. So like, point 0.2 on 10 minutes. So it's kind of like focusing a little bit on that, not going crazy to the point where I would re-injure myself, but that was kind of a good focus for me. But that second time I was able to really have good trust in my body, that it was going to be fine. And so I wasn't having this like crazy ups and downs feeling. And so I was able to appreciate the process a lot better of recovery and appreciate the process of rebounding and coming back. And I was able to come back so much faster. I was honestly shocked. My first race after the surgery it was not really a race. I wouldn't say it was a little bit premature, but I really wanted to do the 50th anniversary of the Virginia 10 miler. So I think that race was actually my first race that I did where I ran or first run that I had done in my recovery. That was a full run.
That's
Didn't have
amazing.
walk breaks. And I was third overall in the 4 mile. I ran, I think, 6:40 something pace. So definitely far off a lot of my times, my PRs
Talk
and
about
stuff.
ripping off the Band-Aid.
Yeah. I was like, that might have been, I was a little nervous. It was a dumb decision, but I felt good. I felt fine. Form felt good. I didn't feel like I caused any damage from it. Everything was good. So that was a positive. I went right back to my run walking. I didn't just all of a sudden just be like, cool, we're healed. I think I actually gave myself a little bit more time to kind of continue to put those pieces back together before I started to kind of push anything. And then the second race I did a 10K here locally in our new city, Chattanooga, and I was running a 6-minute pace for that 10K. So I could see that progression in real time. And then the third race I did was a 4 mile, and I think I actually ran faster in that 4 mile than I did a couple years before when I ran that race. So I was able to really see that come back like so much quicker. My body was just in such a good. So I think that so much of the time, if you just are patient with yourself and then trust your body, don't feel like you have to do this like overwhelming amount of cross training. I was doing I think I started like after I got past the bike, I was doing some more aqua jogging. I was throwing in some aqua jogging workouts, but I was doing, I think the longest that I did in the pool was like, I was doing some long runs that were maybe like 90 minutes max. I wasn't doing any like crazy intense long runs or long bike rides. I was doing some longer stuff, but just like I would in training, just like a longer stint on the bike or a longer pool or aqua jogging session. But I was kind of structuring just like I would training. Most of the time during the week, I was only doing like 45 minutes to an hour of exercise, and then still giving myself a rest day every week. So I didn't go crazy with it. I had a plan, you know, enjoyed it, really kind of embraced the ability to kind of just do more and focus on that. And then I was focusing on then I started focusing on just sort of like moving functionally, and then, you know, all came from there. And so that really helped me. I think the 3 months where I had to really really go back to basics and start over basically back in 2020 really prepared me for being able to. So if you're going through this cycle and like this rest really scares you, just really, it's going to be hard. I mean, there's going to be periods where you're really kind of like faced with the fears like head on, but you just kind of have to let yourself experience them and, you know, find a way through, and you're going to get to the other side and you're going to be like, wow, I just learned something about myself. Like, I'm fine. Everything's fine. When I went through it for the first time, I had I think I gave myself a cue, or I would do something whenever these like sort of negative or fearful thoughts of like, I'm not exercising enough, I'm not doing enough, came up. I would just sort of do something that made me feel strong. And that really helped me to remind myself that like, I'm still strong. I'm still capable, like all these things are still here, you know, so that process felt a little bit less anxiety producing. And that was kind of how I was able to get here. And so I really focused on enjoying the process through the recovery, and then also the build back up was enjoyable. I was able to really see that process, that progress in real time, and that was super fun for me. So yeah.
Well, first off, congrats on the race. 6:40 miling pace after not even having done a straight run after recovery. That's insane.
Yeah, I was honestly pretty shocked. I was like, oh, that's not too bad. And it's a hilly course, so I was like, okay. It goes like downhill the first mile and then kind of rolls, and then it was back up that hill at the end. So I intended to try not to make that race too hard. And then when I finished, I was like, that's the best I've ever raced that race.
That's
I've
incredible.
never managed the course as well until that day. So yeah, it was a good place to start, good motivating place to start. I wouldn't rush that though. You know, don't feel like you have to race. I wouldn't have run that race if I under normal circumstances. I did have clearance. I did talk to people, the PTs beforehand, but
That's a good note. do as I say, not as I do, right?
yeah, 100%. Like, don't be in any rush to actually like figure out what your motivations are behind doing that race. I wore my trainers. I didn't put on my racing shoes so that to just really work on not overdoing it, because that was the number one goal, was to not get too overly invested in it. It was really just to kind of like just run and try to run a good race without going too hard and keep. And so I think that's how I raced it so well. Like, the fitness was not there yet, so I think that's why it ended up getting hard there at the end. But I did feel like I managed it so much better than I ever have. So, yeah.
And if we're to take some of this in kind of a broader context, even beyond recovery or injuries, is there anything through the last year or two and the surgery and coming back to it and getting back to racing that you've really learned about yourself for running, or just what makes you better as an athlete?
I mean, I think it just boils down to I have built a little bit more confidence in myself, and the biggest things have just been literally listening to my body, which I think I could just keep saying over and over again. But that was the biggest thing I didn't do well before. And it's the thing that I've started doing workouts where I, 'cause I think I could just keep saying over and over again, but that was the biggest thing I didn't do well before. And it's the thing that I've started doing workouts where I, 'cause I think I could just keep saying over and over again, but that was the biggest thing I didn't do well before. And it's the thing that I've started doing workouts where I am sometimes not even looking at the, like I go out and I'm like, okay, go by effort. And so I'll start off and I won't start by looking at the watch. I'll start by feeling what it feels like. And I'm like, okay, do I think I can hold this for the entirety of this workout? Does this feel like a half marathon effort, or does this feel like whatever effort? And then I'll look at the pace when I see the split come up. And so then that sets the tone of like, okay, you know, this workout, say it was like, I specifically remember a workout I did that on. It was 4x2 and it was a little bit warmer that day, full sun. And I was like, all right, let's aim for whatever effort. And so I started off, I looked down at the pace, which was slower than I had written on my calendar. But I was like, this is the effort for today. This is the right effort, I think. And so I was like, let me just stick with this. If I can stick with this, this is a success. And that was what I did. I think I did end up getting a little bit faster just from getting into the workout a little bit farther, but it was not a whole lot. I kind of was able to keep it super consistent and feel strong throughout. And so I remember being super proud of that effort. I was like, that was great. Like, you know, this was exactly what my body needed today. And I feel like in the past, I would have tried to go for the pace, and I would have ended up having to cut the workout short or adjusted the workout in some way because it was not coming together. And instead of just being afraid of it being in the heat and I gotta, you know, can I do this workout? I just sort of gave myself flexibility to approach it in a way that I would be able to finish. And then, you know, if even if I slowed it down and I still needed to adjust, like that's okay. That's totally fine. But I adjusted and I let myself go by effort, and I finished the workout as planned. I didn't have to adjust it. I just was a little bit slower, and that was what I needed that day. So I think those are the things that I've become better at. I've been coaching myself right now, just because I've kind of been enjoying sort of just the flexibility of that, of being able to sort of adjust and fluctuate things based on how my body's feeling, and I think I've been giving myself permission more that way. I know that not every athlete is that way, but that's been, I think, something that's been good for me, is just being able to not feel you know, like I have to do something. And I know myself right now, so I'm like, okay, I feel confident in doing this workout versus this one, and it feels like the right move for what I need. So that's been good. But that's, you know, not everybody has that luxury. But yeah, I think it's been nice to, I don't know how long I'll coach myself for, but coming back from injury, it was helpful. So yeah.
And at this point in your running, what do you define as your main objective or reason for the run? And that can be a race, but it can also be like, is there something else that's motivating you right now more than anything?
I mean, I I really want, and this is probably like a little bit like surface level, but I really want to qualify for the 2028 Olympic Trials Marathon.
They
And
just announced the standards, right?
yes, it's 2:37 for the women. They're going to do an A and B standard, but they haven't announced what's A versus B. But I ran the 2016 trials, dropped out. And I think in a lot of ways that defined a lot of how I was training then. That marathon, I was like, gotta run 100-mile weeks, gotta do all these things, and I wasn't listening to my body at all. And I got to the race, I was sick that week, which is common. If you overdo it, your immune system is heightened and not in a great position. So I got sick the week before the race. I had overtrained. I was having issues. I was having symptoms of overtraining prior to the race, and I did not adjust on race day. I did not look at the trials as like this is a great opportunity to just run and finish and say you ran the Olympic trials. Like, that was not the approach I had, and I dropped out. So in a lot of ways, I really have been this last cycle. I wanted to qualify in 2024, but the hamstring stuff and the hip stuff was kind of the reason that never came together. I felt ready for it. I felt like I was fit enough, but it just, you know, the injuries really prevented me from being able to race. But, you know, thinking back, you know, the Olympics are in LA, which is where I ran the 2016 trials. I don't know where the trials will be this year. Probably LA, who knows? But that's been the big motivating factor. I mean, 8 years later, if I could qualify for I guess not 8 years, 12 years later. I can't do math right now. Yeah, 12 years. After I qualified, being able to go back and finally re-qualify I think it would just kind of be a really good cap, because this could be, I don't know. I have no idea where my rest of my running career will go, and I'm definitely getting up there in age now. So it just feels like it would be a good full circle moment to be able to qualify and race again at the Olympic trials and finish. Like that's literally like the one thing I would just super love to accomplish. If that doesn't happen for me, that's totally fine. But um, yeah, I just sort of want to be able to go back and just have that opportunity over again, and do it in a way that I can just redefine that moment for myself, not have it be what it was in 2016, which was just sort of a rough go, and also kind of the period where I started going in the wrong direction training wise, where I just sort of started really struggling, and so I'd really love to just be able to have that be the cap to all of this and all the running in my career. May not be the end of my career, but it would just be a really good way to um, come back to it. So yeah.
Yeah. What would it mean to overcome those setbacks to achieve that goal that you'd been chasing for so long?
I mean, I think that it would just sort of bring. I don't know. So much of my career since I ran my first marathon to now, through a lot of the downs that happened coming off of my 2016 Indy Monumental Marathon, where I really struggled for a few years. Um, I was sort of counting the years, like, since I'd run well, and I can't. I ran okay in 2017. I had some good races, but it was hot, so my times weren't as fast, and so I was kind of giving myself and kind of giving myself negative feelings about that year, but it wasn't that bad. But it did keep getting worse after that, and I struggled and I struggled, and I just feel like the ability to kind of bounce back and prove to myself that my potential that I knew I had then is still there, or that I had that potential then, and maybe I could have expressed it. That's the thing that has been really weighing on me, is that I felt like I had so much potential when I ran my first marathon, and all the halves to qualify for the trials. I had so much potential, and then I lost it, or it just felt like it got farther and farther away. And in the back of my head, I've just been like, I know that I have more potential in the marathon in the half than I was, maybe in the marathon, maybe not in the half. I don't know. I ran pretty fast in the half. I feel like I have more potential. And I just would, being able to run and qualify for the trials and run a 230, sub 237 would be able to kind of remind myself, like, yes, I didn't waste. I think the other hard part is the health part of that, and the eating disorder part of that has really made me super have a lot of regret for things that happened, and choices I made. And so I really want to be able to say, like, you can rebound from it, you can come back from it, um, and really see my potential. I just want to be able to, like, have that opportunity to really see the potential that I had come back here. And yeah, so yeah, I don't know.
Do you think there's other runners who maybe will never run at the Olympic trials, but who will look at that as a pretty cool thing that you're managing to come back and achieve such a lofty goal?
I hope so, because I think that it's been something that I also think about when, especially with, like, younger athletes and things like that, that if they're kind of feeling the pressure, or they're in this position where they're, under fueling or doing something that's not going to be good for them long term, that they'll think about sort of just like, I don't, let's skip that middle part. Let's not go down that path and have that sort of negative, not even negative, but just like to have to deal with that, because it has been sort of the thing that's been the hardest about going through this injury cycle, and the timing of it was that it really cut into the timeline of time that I have left to continue to see how much faster I can get, just because I'm, about to be, I mean, I am mid-30s, and so there's definitely, like, a little bit of a window of time here for me. And I would hate to have other athletes experience that, and kind of not get to see themselves continue to succeed and reach whatever goals they would like to reach. So part of me thinks a lot about that. Like, this is not, you don't have to do it this way. Um, be healthy, think about that first. You're going to be able to take it a lot farther if you do that. You have so much time to develop and do stuff like that. But then for athletes who are just like generally training and just trying to meet their goals, like, yeah, if there was something that happened in your training and it kind of took you away from it and you've been struggling with that, I mean, there's still, just listen to things, listen to your body, be able to give yourself grace and be able to take rest when you need to. Consistency is just so much more important. So finding ways to be consistent and get out there and do the thing, and knowing that it's going to be a challenge, but all you can do is try. And so that's really where I've been, is like, I may not reach this goal, but I want to be able to get to the end of my time as an elite competitive runner, being able to say that I did everything I could in the process, that I didn't let the experiences I had in my past prevent me from trying. And so same thing goes to, I think, any other runner out there, that you got to keep trying. If you have something that's really motivating, if you want to qualify for Boston Marathon or something like that, keep putting it together, and enjoy it. Like, have fun, embrace it, embrace the process. Because honestly, like, this last year was great because I was able to look back on it and be like, look how much progress I made. Look what I was able to do. I was so proud of it and shocked, honestly, that I was able to make such good progress. So that stuff has been really great. So even if I don't reach it, like, I did all the things right. I did this by 30s. I've been running smarter, training better, enjoying it more. And so those are things that I'm going to be able to carry with me. So I hope that for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's part of the fun of running, right? Is that it's hard to do and you don't know if you're going to achieve your goals, but it really is the journey rather than the destination. And whatever happens, I think super cool that you can chase big, lofty goals and put it all out there to really go after it and tell the world literally on this podcast what those goals are.
Yeah. 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 So fingers crossed, hopefully good weather and things for my marathon in the fall. But either way, just sort of taking everything in stride and enjoying the process. So yeah. Yeah. Just keep focusing forward and what kind of you want to achieve, and yeah, not letting it define you, but enjoying it.
Well, I hope so much that you crush the race. And what is the marathon that you're going to be running in October?
Oh, the Columbus Nationwide Children's Hospital Marathon. So that's where my PR half marathon is. So I've been wanting to run this marathon for a few years, and so I was like, why not this year? Let's do it. Be fun. Haven't run the marathon there, so thought it would be a good one to tackle.
Nice. No time like the present, right?
Yeah, and I've been on a journey to like also be like, run races you haven't run before. I got stuck doing the same ones over and over again, and I was like, no, we got to experience more. So yeah.
I love it. Well, best of luck, Andie. I know you're, well, hoping for good weather for you, and if all goes well with the recovery and stuff, that it's a great run. And I know you'll have a little bit more time before that to run that trial standard. So
Yep.
excited to watch that journey. And thanks for coming on to share with us about what's gone into coming back from injury and surgery to getting on your bike with crutches all the way to now running 10 milers and hopefully a marathon in October.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. And it's hopefully motivating for some people to keep moving forward if they're kind of in this position with injury. So, yeah.
I think it definitely was. Thanks, Andie.